Okay, and we are live. Welcome everybody to Kubernetes SIG API Machinery bi-weekly meeting. Today is August 7th, 2024. My name is Federico Bongiovanni, and we're going to start with the meeting today. I was saying before starting the recording that we have one topic, but we wanted to favor the cadence of the meetings. So let's go ahead with that. I don't know who wants to start with this. Is Adrian? Yes, I see you on the call. You want to start the discussion?
Yes, sure. Thank you. I see there are already some comments, but let me explain. Am I able to share the screen if possible?
You can, yes. Let me stop sharing. I think I have to make you, give me 1 second, co-host or presenter or something like that.
Okay.
Participants. Adrian, more. Okay, I made you co-host. Try to present now.
Okay, let's try. Okay, I hope you see
Yes,
the documents.
we can see.
Okay, so hi everyone, I'm Adrian and I'm working as a software engineer in CERN with my colleague Antonio that is also on the call. And our case is that we mostly use Kubernetes to host our infrastructure, and we were writing a tool to facilitate migration between versions of the Kubernetes cluster and trying, because our default approach is trying to redeploy the existing workloads and resource templates. Everything was done basic on the Swagger, the public Swagger in version 2 from Kubernetes repository. Yeah, however, it turns that it's not enough, and many of the rules, validation rules, are not included in the publicly visible schema, and they are put separately in the various places in the code. So we have high inconsistency, and it makes impossible to directly statically on the client side validate the workloads, validate the correctly. So let me go through the document. This is example of on the right side of the totally valid ingress. And what we can spot if some fields are I mean, we can validate, of course, the JSON or YAML resources, checking if there are unknown fields and if we handle them as errors or we just omit them. And that works pretty well. However, we have one of the many examples that are possible to prepare when the resource definition is totally fine from the Swagger point of view, but we are able to get to know that it is incorrect only on the server side. I mean, when we try to deploy the resource directly to the real Kubernetes server, or at least Kube API combined with etcd, and what we see, we have a backend that has service that has name, and let me switch to here. This is part of the JSON that is responsible for this part of the resource, and what we can check that.
Can you make it larger? Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, sure. I hope. Okay. I hope it is fine enough. And the point is that when we describe the backend, anything that is needed, I mean, when we describe the service that is under the backend, that is in our object, everything that is needed is a name. However, when we try the resource, let me, 1 second. However, when we try this kind of YAML to validate against the schema, we get to know that this is totally fine. But when we try to deploy this on the server, we get to know that the required value is port name or number. It comes directly from the code. There is additional check for the ingress. We have case has resource backend, and in this case, we're gonna check. There's big if else, but if port name and port number, there is some additional validation above all the port names, or else we check the port name, additional validation, and if there is no port name and no port number, we print an error that port name or number is required. And so the point is that this is one of the many cases, and we would like to increase the awareness, or maybe to understand what it's supposed to be like, because there were many projects over years that trying to handle this static client-side validation of the Kubernetes workloads that could be very beneficial and helpful during migration from one to another cluster version that is very rapidly processed. And yeah, we would like to know if it's known issue, or what's the proposed workaround, or maybe there was some changes when OpenAPI v3 was introduced in the Kubernetes a few months ago, or how we can deal with it. If you could advise somehow, it would be very beneficial, or if it could be at least pointed in the Kubernetes documentation to avoid people of creating this kind of projects again and again. So yeah, so this is more or less our case. So
I can comment maybe on a few points. So you said in the beginning inconsistent validation or something like that. So one rule we have is basically OpenAPI validation, or the OpenAPI schema should be correct, not complete. And I don't think you complained about that it's not correct, like inconsistent. You complain about the completeness, right?
Yes.
We have some bugs.
Yes.
Yeah, we have some bugs in certain areas where the OpenAPI schema is actually not correct, but that's a different topic. And completeness is, it's an open-ended topic. And you had another example for the service, for the ports. You can express, I think, that one in OpenAPI, but in general, OpenAPI is pretty limited, right? One reason is, it's a reason that we have CEL today, CEL validation and CRDs, because OpenAPI is just not enough. I link to this long-term effort. There's this enhancement in the agenda of annotating our API types in a way that we can produce better schemas, even though validation might be done in code. This topic, I think it needs more hands, like more people pushing it forward. We want to get a more complete schema for sure. So I don't think there is a blocker for most of the things. There are some controversial topics, whether we publish default values, for example. But in general, things which we can express in a clean way in OpenAPI, in general, we want to expose. It's just a matter of somebody working on that, improving the tooling. So most of the schema comes from the OpenAPI gen and OpenAPI. You might have seen it already. It's a parser of the code and of the types, and produces schemas more or less complete. So if you have improvements for that, they're very welcome, I think. I'm not sure about this topic here, the one you have on the screen, like supports, and there are more complicated cases in validation. How much you can actually sensibly express, because if schemas get bigger and bigger, you can express certain things, like those disjunctions there. Support name can be there, or support number can be there. How do you express that in OpenAPI? It's limited.
Okay, so So the only, let's say, real or true validation at this point and in the near future can be done only at the server side, right? Like
that is an accurate statement, and that has been the position of the project ever since the first attempt at doing client-side validation. The first attempt at client-side validation in kube control went so badly that we spent years trying to undo that mistake, because what ends up happening is that clients are unreliable in comparison to the server. And so what we've done instead in later levels, it's been around a while, is the concept of a dry run. So you can actually submit your resources, send them with an option that says dry run, and the server will return back to you errors. And so, you asked, like, what could we do instead? I think a flow that starts just a minimal Kube API server with the CRDs that you're interested in, and then runs a series of dry runs on the resources that you have, would be a very good path towards knowing whether they are valid or not.
Okay, that is very helpful. And is it possible to point it in some somewhere in the documentation or maybe in the main project to avoid future researchers trying to handle this case in the client side? Because I spot many projects and many contributors that they spend months or years trying to handle this, and at some point they figure out that it's impossible because of additional checks in the code that are not present in the schema. So is it possible to put it in some very visible place or as a note or anything? Because I'm strongly sure it will happen again.
So
where would you have expected that?
That's exactly what I would ask. And what I would tell you is, I think we're open to that. I'm open to that, Stefan. I think you are as well. I think the best way to do that is for you to pick the spot where you would say, this is the spot where I would have looked and noticed. And if you open the documentation PR and then pop into the API Machinery channel and then just tag myself or Stefan and say, hey, I've got this PR, it adds the verbiage in a spot where I would have noticed, we can help you get that landed. Because there's no objection to doing that, but it's always like, well, where do you, if I put it down in the validation code that you didn't get to until the very end here, it's not going to help you very much.
Okay.
I think that's something. Yeah.
Okay, guys. So I think that's everything that I would like to present for the moment. Thank you for the clarification, and yeah, and I think I can give you the screen back.
Are you familiar with that dry run option that I?
Yeah.
Okay,
yes,
great.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure.
No,
but it was. There's also another option that you probably want to use as well. That is enforce strict field comparison. I don't remember the name of the field. You'll see it on the create and the update options. It's what it means is if you submit a field to a if you submit, say, a 131 field to a 129 server that doesn't have that field, the QAPI server can tell you, hey, I'm not honoring this. And depending on your use case, I don't know your use case, but depending on your use case, that can be very helpful.
I mean, just to add something to what Adrian said, this will be also useful in cases like, I don't know, you do Kubernetes upgrading in place, like where basically before to actually move the API to the new version, you want to make sure that everything works in the new version. That's a kind of use cases. What we were doing now so far was really to just spawn up a new cluster and try the workload there. That is okay, we can continue to do, but sometimes we want really to have something like that we could automatize in a static way. But okay, if it's not possible, it's not. I think it's
okay. So separate of what we talked about before, if there is an issue where upgrading the cluster results in a new validation rule that makes an existing object invalid, we would consider that to be a very serious bug, and we would want to fix it. Now, I don't know whether you've been bit in the past. I know the CERN guys have been using this product since like forever ago. And so we've had some bumps. I won't say we've been perfect, but if we make an existing valid object invalid on a cluster that is upgraded in place, that's a pretty severe problem. That is different than saying that you should be able to continue creating right? So an example here might be on our path to CRD v1, right? When you switched from v1 beta 1 to v1, there were new rules. You could have CRDs that were completely valid as v1 beta 1 that could not be recreated as v1. And it was around structural schema choices, right? And so that we did not see as breaking in that way, because if you had already created it, you could keep it, but you could not start up a new cluster and recreate it as v1. If that makes sense.
Okay. I think we can, I mean, just follow your suggestion. Probably Adrian will just add this to the documentation, then ping you when we're was actually continuing that way. Then we understood, but yes, that's
sorry for the bump, and we will keep an eye out for your message.
Thanks a lot.
I think it would be great if you apply these suggestions and then, I don't know, a month, 2 months from now, you come back letting us know how it went. I think it's like a, to close the loop. Very well. I think that is the one topic we had today. Thank you for the participation. Stefan put some comments on the broader topic of declarative validation, and that is something that Joe is not on the call today, but we are thinking how to keep putting more hands there to keep pushing that, for completion. I know Tim Hawking, who is not here, is also a big fan of that one, so there is a lot of interest to make that happen, but requires investment and time. That said, I think that's all we have for today, unless anybody has anything else that they want to bring up.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, David. Ben, do you want to discuss this API serving with the routing thing?
So I was hoping to wait for Joe to be here as well, so that we could get all the API machinery leads at the same time. And
I agree.
Will that work for you, Eric? I mean, it'll be the
same. Yeah. So I guess it will be 2 weeks after, or
yes,
2 weeks from now. Yes.
Okay. Cool.
Sounds good. Yeah. I will already move it in the agenda, so it's the first topic next time. Okay. Very good. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful Wednesday and rest of the week. Thank you for coming. See you next time.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. See you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.